It takes time to understand how much mothers give, how much mothers pour into their children. It's not usually till we are adults and sometimes have our own children that we realize that precious gift. Mothers today, I think, are the most unappreciated people group on the planet. We certainly are blessed in so many ways because of the gift of a mother's love. I look back at my life, and I've said this before, and I will say it till Jesus comes. I don't think I would be where I am today if my mother's love wasn't the driving force behind her prayers that went out to God when her son was not following God. Her love and devotion and compassion and sometimes correction helped shape and form my value system that enables me to share God's love with you today. We're going to look at a story today of a woman who is, we don't know for certain in the Bible, but she has the heart of persistent love. We don't know if she's a mother, but we will look at this story and see what does this woman share with us today as we honor mothers, that we need to look again at the women that are in our congregation. And the story is found in the book of Luke, chapter 18, verse 1. We will stay in this section of the Bible today with a very few diversions elsewhere, but if you go to Luke chapter 18, verse 1, I'd like you to follow with me as we go through the story. Jesus is telling a parable to his disciples. It's found in verse 1. And he says, Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. Jesus wants his disciples to understand there's something that they need to know. There's something about perseverance, persistency that he wants them to know. And he uses this short symbolic story, a narrative of a parable, to help them get it. And it's a very amazing, interesting story. Let's look at the story here as we go forward. In Luke chapter 18, verse 2, he says this parable. In a certain town, there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared about what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, "Grant me justice for my adversary." As we see the story unfold before us, we see a sense of injustice taking place. We could all kind of picture this in our mind if this was your case, what you would want done. We see injustice that, sadly, parallels a lot of our world today. There's a lot of injustice going on. Our millennial generation and the Gen X generation and those who are following have a high sense of justice. We see movements taking place because people want justice. This story tells us God understands what justice is about. This story tells us that God's people understand what injustice is about too. And so Jesus goes on with this story for the very purposes his disciples need to understand through the eyes of this woman's experience what it means to be persevering. Persistency is a gift. You believe that? Now, if you are on the receiving end of persistency, you might not see it as a gift. This judge is not seeing this persistency as a gift. For those of you who know, my wife and I have talked about this and who's more stubborn than the other. And, well, she's agreed, it's her. But the truth is, while at times, we may not appreciate the persistency, hindsight tells us, where would we be without persistent women? Let's be honest. Persistent women have made a difference in the course of history. Persistent women have made a difference in our own recent history. Susan B. Anthony, for those of you remember her little face on the dollars that we still have. They don't mint those coins anymore, but there they are. She is a model of a woman with persistency. She was arrested in 1872 for casting her vote for the President of the United States. She refused to pay the fine. It was a $100 fine, which would have been a lot of money back then. And she was arrested for that. She was fighting for women's rights, a cause that is always worthwhile. Unfortunately, she didn't get to see the result of her warfare. But here in Wyoming, we actually have a testimony to women. And those of you who know Wyoming history, you got this, you understand this. But Wyoming was the first state to actually allow women to vote and to hold office. December 10, 1869, the right was given to women to be able to hold office and to vote. Our first female governor was Nellie Rose. We understand the rights and the values of women. I wish all states did. Sadly, women's rights and values have been marginalized in many ways. And it doesn't help us that we have sexualized women to an extent that their value is diminished. We have done so at the disservice of women. There needs to be a new movement to stand up and say women will no longer be trafficked and sexualized. Jeffrey Epstein got away with the crime of the century and all of those connected with him because the value of women isn't seen as it should be. This judge doesn't value women the way he should. Even in that society, women didn't have the value that they should. She was a nuisance to him, the story tells us that, but she's persistent. Something about her character, God wants us to take heart and to notice there is something about her that isn't stated about men. Jesus is speaking this parable. It's on the heels of other things that he's been sharing. If you go back in Luke and you look at chapter 17, he's talked about forgiving those who are, somewhat unforgivable. If someone comes to you 7 times a day and asks you forgiveness, give them forgiveness. He goes on to talk about those who were going to be living, as it were, in the days of Lot and Noah, speaking of our world at the end of time. He's talking about all these things that are going on. People are busy. They're buying and drinking, selling and marrying and giving in marriage. And then he shows up in the clouds. There's something about being persistent that enables you to get home. You believe that? If you can persistently come to church, that's a good thing. If you're persistently proclaiming your love for Jesus, that's a good thing. The fact that we are here today, year after year, week after week, praising God, singing praises to God. Bless you, Debbie. Says persistency is important in getting ready to go home. And for that reason, I want to look at how to honor women today. This woman is giving us an example of someone we should honor. There she is. She's in a town, an unnamed town with an unnamed judge who doesn't fear God. Obviously, he has no regard for this poor widow's plight. He doesn't fear, love, respect, care, or even worship God. It's an indication of the reality that, in many respects, our world is in. People don't fear, love, respect, worship God. And it affects how we treat women. Isn't that amazing? Love for God, respect for God, ultimately will hold women in higher regard. But when we take God out of the equation, we put women in a place that demeans them, demoralizes them, devalues them, defaces them, degrades them. And Jesus says this judge doesn't care about anyone until the day this woman shows up in his courtroom. Kind of wonder what that situation was like. Walk with me through this for a moment. He's an unjust judge. That's what the story tells us. He doesn't care about anyone but himself, apparently. He has no fear of God, no regard or care for what anyone thinks. And she walks into his courtroom, and he certainly doesn't care about women. And she comes up before him and says, Your Honor, I need your help. I have a case I need you to hear. There's an adversary that is against me. Help me. And he looks at her and says, What's that to me? That's your problem. I'm not going to listen to your case. Go away. She walks out. Most people would be very disheartened. She might have been. But because of her character of persistency, she rises above this. because of her continual desire or design or plan to get what she knows is rightly owed to her, she doesn't let his attitude or his judgment sway her. This is a character trait of God's people. God's people at the final end of time are told that we have people of great faith, that they consistently, persistently go forward in that faith. That even though the devil is the roaring lion who is seeking to devour, he is the one who is seeking to destroy God's people, the church still goes forward. It doesn't take no for an answer. I think one of the gifts that I believe women exemplify, and my own wife I'm going to use as an example, is how to be persistent in a way that it's good. I saw an article. It was written with a question about it. I made a note here, see if I can find it here. It was a way to be persistent and actually without being annoying. The article was actually written from a woman's perspective to men, though. It was trying to encourage men how to engage a woman, maybe get her attention, maybe ultimately have a relationship, even though she may not be reciprocating. It gave different small, nice little tips on how to do this. This woman has learned how to do this in a masterful way because she doesn't stop. She comes back. Maybe it's the next day. Maybe it's 2 days later, whatever it is. There she is. And he looks at her and goes, "What? I told her to go away. She's here again. What's going on?" Talks to the bailiff, the clerk. "What's going on?" "Well, she paid the fine, our fee. She wants to see you." "All right, come forward." "How can I help you, Mrs. Smith?" "Well, Your Honor, I was here the other day and you told me that you wouldn't help me, but I don't think you were able to hear my case. I want to share with you what's going on." Maybe he lets her say a few more words. Yeah, I've heard enough. "Sorry, not going to deal with this. Go your way." "Be gone with you," "Yes." And she leaves. Apparently, Jesus knows the heart of this woman too, because how to be persistent and not give up. She goes on again, leaves the courtroom, knowing the judge doesn't care about her, knowing that he's going to probably render her the same verdict the next time she comes back. But it makes you wonder, this judge who doesn't care about others, what did he think about his parents? What if it was his mother that came before him? We don't know the thoughts that are going on in his mind, but this judge in this town, if it's a Jewish judge in a Jewish town, he understands the Torah, he understands the law, he understands that the fifth commandment says to honor your father and mother. The commandment with a promise, as you've heard. If you do this, it will be good for you. If you don't, well, there's a curse on you. If you honor your father and your mother, the commandment says, your days will be long upon the land which the Lord your God is going to give you. Your life, your long life expectancy is dependent upon how you treat your mom and dad. Pretty serious stuff when you think about it. It's a lesson that children today need to relearn or learn anew. Because children today are the most disrespectful of their parents that we've probably ever seen in any time in the history of humanity. Sorry, kids that are listening to me, but I just have to say it because it's true. And you guys know it's true. But that can change. Children today talk to their parents in such disrespectful tones that, man, my mouth would have been washed out, my face would have been beet red, I would have had a behind that I wouldn't have sat down on for months. You know what I'm saying is true. We would have been totally taken out to the woodshed. It would have hurt and hurt and hurt, and we never would have done that again. I can hear my own father's voice. You will not speak to your mother that way. And you didn't. It didn't work. Respect for our mothers is paramount to honoring mothers on Mother's Day. How do we honor someone we don't respect? If I say, I love you, Mom, and then Mom says, hey, would you do the dishes? And I turn around and go, no, that's not really showing I really care. Samantha and I don't have children. We have two pets that show us the same level of disrespect continually. I understand this to a point. I'm not saying all kids are this way. Please don't get me wrong. I see children that are very respectful, and you know that they've had good parenting. You know that their parents have shown them the value of respect and love, and they've had to do it persistently. I want to encourage parents, I want to encourage mothers, fathers, be persistent in your discipline of your children. Because when we stop doing that, the world throws in a whole plethora of things to be disrespectful for, and they pick up on it very quickly. But put yourself back in the place of this woman. She's a widow. She's lost her husband. Put all that emotional distress that's on her because she's coming before a judge, a man, hoping that somehow he will vindicate the injustice that's taking place. We don't know what it is, but it's worthy of a just cause. It's worthy of her bringing it before the judge. She's hoping that somehow he will make a difference. We don't know if there's children in her life, but if they are there, they're not taking care of this situation. She has to do it alone. Someone's maliciously schemed to take advantage of you. How would you feel about that? You're hoping that somehow you'll get justice through that. What kind of person does this to a defenseless widow anyway? You're in a desperate situation. You're defenseless against your adversary. You're seeking justice. You're pleading for mercy. The very one who is supposed to help you, the person you trust to give you an honest, just verdict, says, I'm not going to listen to you. I don't care. She's got a just cause. Jesus said so. She's challenging injustice. Kind of like reminds you of what Rosa Parks did when she said, I'm not going to get up and give my seat to this white person and sit in the back of the bus. Sometimes you have to do what's unpopular to do what's right. The church today is going to need this form of persistency as we go forward. So I challenge our mothers to don't stop being persistent in your love. Don't stop being persistent in your desire to see what is right and just and what is good. I challenge to our community who may be listening is it's time for us to value justice the way God sees justice. But doesn't mean that just because you are going to seek justice, that you're going to find it. You may have to keep pushing for a while. God knew that this judge was going to treat this woman this way. He also knows that Deuteronomy tells us that, you can't deprive a foreigner of the fatherless justice. You can't take the cloak of a widow as a pledge. He knows he's supposed to listen to her. He knows he's supposed to give her justice. He knows all of this, and yet he chooses to ignore her. But she keeps coming back. Luke chapter 18, verse 5, the judge starts to think more about what's going on. He sees her coming into the courtroom again. Oh, no, seriously, not again. How many times I got to listen to this? You let her in again? She paid the fee. Yeah, but tell her it's over. I'm not going to listen. She paid the fee. It's your job. Do your job. Verse 5, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, she's bothering me, she's annoying me, she's troubling me, I will see that she gets justice. He's protecting himself from inconvenience. distress. I would hate to say this, but it's true. Men, you're going to have to back me up on this. There's sometimes you'll do what your wife says because she keeps asking you, right? The trouble is, in some respects, some of those things you should have already done. That's true. Guys, let's just be honest here. Sometimes it just doesn't fit with your schedule. It doesn't fit with your plans. It doesn't fit with where you're at the moment. But generally, women's desires and plans center around the home. You notice this? Making the home a better place, making the family a better place, doing things around the home. My dear wife will remind me of things that we're supposed to do around the home. She thinks I forgot them, like they've left me. And I don't fault her for that because I'm not talking about them, you know? And maybe they're not done as quickly as they should be. But it's that persistency that helps get it done. Now, to my wife's credit, she's always by my side whenever I'm doing these things. We go out into the yard, to work on the house. She's right there with me. We've been doing a lot of work on our house. For those of you who've been to our house know, and we're still not done. And even no matter what the project is, she is there persistently working with me, doing things that she probably would rather not do herself. But because she loves me, she wants to be with me, and she helps me. That kind of motivation motivates me. It's not like the judge is saying, seriously, woman, get out of my courtroom. I'm done listening to you. It's like, this job wouldn't be half as much fun on my own. It's more rewarding when we can do it together. It's more important when we can do it together. But her persistency is a motivation. This woman's persistency is going to motivate this judge who is saying, she's still bothering me. I got to get her justice. I got to get her out of my courtroom. I don't want to see her ever again. I'm done with this. And the reason is so she won't eventually come and attack me, is what the NIV Bible says, or the King James says, weary me out. He's tired. He doesn't want to listen to anymore. Guys, it would be terrible if that's the only reason that you did what your wife asked you to do, because you were tired of the nagging. This world is in need of men who will work together with their wives, but today we see a lot of power struggles, a lot of struggles between men and women that shouldn't be there. I think the story is here recorded in Scripture, not only for that we will see persistency, that we will realize there's value in what women have to offer, even though we may not appreciate it initially. Then God makes his point. Look at what Jesus said. Verse 6. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. What did he say? She's bothering me. I'll give her justice so she doesn't wear me out. Listen to what this unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his own ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? Jesus admits that he's an unjust judge. No question about that. He's unjust in what he's doing. He's unjust. He has no heart. He doesn't care for this widow's wants, needs, or heartaches. She appears to have no one by her side, no family, no friend, but God has noticed. And for women who may feel like they're in this alone at times, and there are marriages, sadly, that men and women, but today we're looking at women. Women feel like they're going through it alone. The husband is just an absentee husband. He's emotionally not there. He's not respecting her wants, her needs, her wishes. He's not respecting her as a person. He's not loving her as a person. And so there is this void, this emptiness in the marriage, in the life, that God says, I see that. I understand that. I'm there for you. The reason this unjust judge yields to her plea, it's not solely because she comes back. It's because God is going to intervene on her behalf. The thoughts that he is thinking are ones that are distressful to him, but he's looking at her and God says, I'm going to give her justice. Jesus just said it. She gets justice because God is on her side. She's been crying out to God continually day and night, and even though the judge refuses to act justly, he's persuaded to do what's right because God will not let him avoid her plea. He's trying, but God will not let him. Not one moment longer. It's over. Speedily, Jesus says. And the reason she's so persistent is because God put persistency in her heart. Persistency may be a way for God to use women to train their children in the right way to go. How many times did your mother tell you, don't do this, and she kept telling you not to do this till you finally got that you shouldn't do this? It worked, right? I hear myself saying over and over again, I've heard other people saying over and over again things that my mother told me, my father told me when I was younger. It's like you look at a situation and out of my mouth comes their words. It's like, how did you get in there? But it's true. And because we know it's true, we want to see our society do what is right. Where would we be without our mothers? For your dear mom, this is God's encouragement to you, to all our mothers. When you're faced with opposition, it may be enormous opposition. When you're faced with the challenges of what you're going through, your children have left the safety of home. They've traveled to a world that's uncaring. Your children are in a place where injustice is everywhere. God still sees. God still cares. God still gives you the persistency to pray for them, even when they don't see. I would encourage women to be as insistent as God prompts you to be, to pray for your wayward children, and maybe for your husband's hearts to love you and to love God the way you do. For you husbands, well, there's a reason this story is about a woman, not a man. Jesus could have turned it that way. He didn't. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 13, we see the woman that is gone into the wilderness. It's interesting that God uses the illustration of a woman or the analogy of a woman to parallel the church. Verse 13, the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth. He pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 legs with the wings of an eagle that she might flee to a place prepared for her in the wilderness. God is going to protect his church. We saw that through the dark ages. He's going to protect his church going forward. But this woman has to flee. This woman is being directed by God. There is a reason that the analogy of women is here and it's in this story, is because there is a gift in motherhood and womanhood that men would well take notice of and respect. For our children, I say it's time to respect our dear moms the way they deserve. It's time to show them the appreciation for their relentless, persistent love. It's time to realize God gave you a gift that you will miss tremendously when she's gone. My mom's been gone for over 30 years, and I think about that gift many, 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 many times. It's one that I will have eternity to repay and thank her for. But guys, kids, I don't know what your family's like, but I do know that you could be at the very place where God is using your mom to get you home. What does God do in contrast with what this unjust judge has done? Luke chapter 18, verse 8, I tell you, Jesus says, he will see that they or this woman gets justice and quickly, speedily is what the King James says. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? What was the beginning paragraph or the beginning comment we saw in Luke chapter 18, verse 1? The reason that they are to listen to this parable, to follow the principles of this parable, is that they should continually pray and not give up. Faith is a persistency. Faith is something that you have and you are gifted, but it's something that you have to hold on to. It takes a lot of faith to realize that when you've messed up, that God's love is still there for you. It takes a lot of faith to realize that God gave his Son to pay the price for your sins and that you can trust him with that. That even when the devil says you are a bad person, you've done horrific things, that God says, I love you and I forgive you when you come to him. It takes faith for a mother to continually love her children, maybe when they have turned their back on God. But God says he wants us to have faith. In eternity, the reward is given to the faithful. In eternity, God will help us to see why your persistent love mattered. But today we want to thank you. Today we want to recognize the gift of womanhood and motherhood and persistent love. To all our mothers in our congregation, we salute you. We thank God for you. And we want you to know how dear you are to our hearts. We want to know that we honor you. We want you to know that you are important to us. We want you to know that your service and your ministry is what makes this church unique, special, and keeps it going forward. It's because of you that we owe a debt of gratitude that we really can't fully repay. But we're thankful for that gift of love.